So Steven, I see 33. Do we still have one more group, another group or two coming back in?
We do. They'll hard stop in about 10 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I think we're back. Welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a great time in the breakout room. Had some rich discussion. I know that group number 3 was had the presence of CFO Cooper, so hopefully got some questions answered there. In that we have already established our table captains for each group. I'm just going to start with each group, and I'll call on your table captain. You'll share out what the group discussed and whatnot. There may be some questions that you didn't get answered. That would be a good time to ask them, and we'll see if we can answer them. And then we'll see where we are once we get through all the groups. So let's start with group 1, Joellen Tapper. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, so we talked about a few different things. So one of them, we know that we're not discussing high schools, but that did come up quite a bit as kind of a theme that a lot of parents have been expressing concerns that it's just difficult to form friendships in high school, which are very different than the friendships that you make in form friendships in middle school, which are very different than those friendships you make in elementary school, and then to go on to possibly a different high school. And we know that we're not discussing that here, but it's hard to know when you don't know exactly where they're going or if they're going to a different high school. So that was a concern that many parents have expressed about where the students are going after middle school. So let's see, we did say that we've gotten the parents, they've expressed that they've gotten a lot of positives, that we think that the revisions are definitely making things cleaner. We did talk a lot about the splits, and we're wondering about some of the more like the 80-20 splits, and just we talked a lot about the inequity sometimes, that the otherness that it makes that 20% group feel. And quite a few of our people talked about, when you have such a small percentage, how that small percentage of students can feel like a minority group in the school, or that they don't belong, or it's hard to get their footing, and they're just the other people in the school. So we talked about a couple possibilities, like could we do more 100% Sunny Hills to PLMS, or more Discovery to Beaver Lake, like 50-50, and try and get them a little bit more balanced. So we were talking about those numbers. And then just one other question we had was, in looking at the maps last time, it looked to us that it said that there was not a boundary change for Grand Ridge, but we were wondering how that was possible if they're getting kindergarten back, for them to fit kindergarten if they are not having a boundary change.
Jake, do you want to jump on that Grand Ridge question?
Yeah, declining enrollment, smaller inbound classes. They were running at one point in time at Grand Ridge 170, 200 a cohort. I think our incoming class right now happens to be, we are at 80 or 80 kids for kindergarten. So you can see the cohort has gotten smaller. And so that's all it is. It's aging in place. What we did in the Grand Ridge, we had to do that was one interim boundary adjustment we made between last boundary committee and this one. And basically we choked off any of the new growth, and most of the growth in the Highlands is west of Highlands Drive. And so by doing that, that community has started to what we call demographically age out and not produce as many children. So Highlands, Grand Ridge proper, it is going to be probably one of our largest schools, but the kindergartners are going to come back. Remember, it's a 28 classroom, I think, and then I think we have 10 or 12 portable classrooms off the top of my head at that building. So we will have sufficient capacity for the kindergartners to come back. So declining enrollment, and that's why the boundary didn't change. What I've also learned over my years is trying to split the Highlands in any form or fashion, except for west of Highlands Drive, is a fool's errand. We started looking at that and we're like, oh, do we go to 10th and High? Do we go to 11th? Do we go to 12th? Maybe we go to up to the coffee shop. So we drew the boundary accordingly, kept that community with its current boundary. And what's really driving that is the decline in enrollment. So if that makes sense, Joel.
Thanks.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Joellen. Let's go to group 2, Lisa Reeder. Lisa, take it away.
Hey guys. Overall, we felt like things were looking good. Jake, I know you're going to hate this, but high school did come up for us because our middle school, I know, I'm sorry. Our middle school 6 kids though, right now you said you weren't 100% sure if the school feeder patterns would change to high schools, but you had Newcastle going to Liberty and the middle school 6 going to Issaquah
Yep.
High. There's some concern that middle school 6 might possibly end up at Liberty, which would be State Route 900 driving for our earliest drivers, which would not be great. So there just, was a little bit of concern about that, or if you felt like this was pretty much set in stone and you would not be splitting middle school 6 into 2 different high schools, feeding them in.
Well, so here's what I'll say about high schools, even though I'm trying to stay out of it best I can. Middle school 6 currently it would be slated as a split feeder. So the Newcastle kids that come over the hill and go to middle school 6 would return to Liberty.
Sorry, I should have said Palace kids, I guess, are the ones that they don't want going on State Route 900.
So here's what I will tell you. That nothing is set in stone, but the math puts you on a fairly logical footing. So the new high school is built, basically would be built equidistant between Skyline and Issaquah High School, therefore drawing down each of their respective enrollments by approximately 600 or 700 kiddos, right?
Yep.
Liberty is built, I think, for 1,400, almost 1,600 capacity.
Mm-hmm.
At its current enrollment at close to 1,400 on the head count. It's pretty close to full. So I can make you no promises, but the math would lead you to believe that those Talus kiddos are going to feed right into Issaquah High. That makes the most sense, right? Because we wouldn't grab more kids out of the corridor and move them to an already full high school.
Okay.
Sense.
Well,
so I'm not making any promises, but and I've talked to a few of you before, if you just look at the math and the logistics, it makes way more sense to keep them in the valley than it does to feed them over the hill.
Okay. And then just, we of course talked about the Discovery 80-20 split. We saw that, it's about 130 kids. And if they went from Beaver Lake Middle School to Pine Lake Middle School, it would put Pine Lake way over capacity. And you're really trying to be equitable and balancing that. So we have no good suggestions. And we just know that some families are going to have to take one for the team on this to help balance it out, and that they will all get to meet up again at high school. And, that's a message we can hopefully relay to our parents. The only thing we would love to request in the future, and I think this is just, it seems like a nitpick because you guys are working so hard on it. These maps are really tough to read, like with very few streets labeled. And we would love if there's a star or an icon where the actual school placement is sometimes, because it's hard for us even to tell on some of.
So we talked about that. So team, Colleen and Bridget, we have to decide, I think, what streets we put on there, or it gets crowded pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Main arterials would probably be helpful. Bridget, can you, and we can put the dots or stars for where the schools are at.
Yeah, I would
can you tell the team what we can do to make them better?
Yeah, we can do that. We can put a star or where the school's at, and then I can highlight some main arterials on there so the main streets. Because if you put too many streets on there, just with our system, it kind of blurs everything. So the main ones, I think we can help you out there.
No, that would be awesome, because even Creekside, we just have basically Southeast 24th and I-90, right? So totally understand not wanting to put a ton of streets on there, but even just a few more, the main arterials would be great.
I'll trade you. We'll have you clear maps if you make some motions here shortly.
Yeah,
No, we did talk about, in all seriousness, once the committee kind of made some movement and springboards, we were going to provide a district-wide elementary map of your work so far, and now the team knows. And actually, I had a board member tell me the same thing. She's like, "Where's the schools at?" I'm like, "Well, sorry, we'll put the dot on there." So we can do that. Anything else, Lisa?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And group number 3, Erin McKee, take it away.
Hey there. We didn't talk about all 5, but the ones we mostly spent our time discussing, we discussed Sunset, keeping them all together, and then they all go to IMS. That community seems happy about, and if I'm misrepresenting group 3, let me know. So they're happy about staying together. There was a lot of talk about the Lakemont community and how the Cougar Ridge and Sunset families want to go to middle school together, but with the size of the Lakemont kind of property map, you just have to split it somewhere, is what Jake shared with us when he visited our breakout room. It's tough because there's some Lakemont families that live closer to Cougar Ridge than Sunset. And then they're part of the similar community, so they want to go to middle school together. And so what was shared with us from Jake was that essentially the motivation for a lot of that is we have 300 kids coming from Maywood into middle school 6, and that's really the priority there, is getting our middle schools to a similar size. And then with Lakemont being so large, it has to be split. And we did talk a bit about, is there a concern with the Newcastle folks leaving the Maywood feeder pattern, really kind of consolidating some high socioeconomic families? We know decisions aren't based on socioeconomic split, but when we started to look closer at the numbers, we realized that the Newcastle free and reduced lunch rate is 8%, and the Maywood average currently is 10%. So it's really, there's a strong perception, I think, in my communities, that the Newcastle families are far and above higher socioeconomic on average than the other feeder elementaries. And it's actually not as big of a difference as maybe perhaps some people think it is. So that was interesting conversation that we had.
Yeah, and Aaron, to put a finer point on that, the calculation from last December, and I update it every December, Briarwood had a 8.9% free and reduced, and Newcastle an 8.2.
Mm-hmm.
And as you talked about, actually the highest poverty schools are Issaquah Valley and Clark in the corridor. And then the highest free and reduced lunch school in the South End is Apollo at just 14.2. And to put it in perspective, last I looked, state average is about 43%. So
yeah, I think the perception's different than the actual facts, which is fine. It's we also talked about the well, I personally am glad that there's a larger percentage of IVE going to middle school 6, because goodness, that'd be tough on that 10% of kiddos coming from IVE to middle school 6. There's a, probably your friend's not coming with you, if you look at the statistics. So we were glad that there was a larger percentage coming from IVE, and we do think that will help with, any concerns in terms of a makeup of the student body as well. So, and then we did discuss a little bit about discovery. Of course, schools want to stay together and not be split. We get that. So we did discuss that as well.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Let's go to group 4 and Tim Baines.
Hello. So similar to other groups, we discussed as it relates to the elementary boundary changes and proposes. We feel good about the recommendations that are made. Representation from Creekside and Sunny Hills and PCMS all shared positive community feedback with regards to the boundary changes relevant to our buildings. One thing I think that Sunny Hills folks that I heard from were pleasantly surprised by was the fact that the Brookshire neighborhood would be remaining at Sunny Hills. And people were kind of up in the air and did not know how that would fall with regards to the addition of elementary 16. So I think that was welcomed. I believe we also shared a question about Grand Ridge and how that was going to work with addition of kindergarten. But Jake, I think you answered that well, just in terms of class sizes. And then, while not necessarily in our purview tonight, we did talk about the middle school conversation, similar to what Erin McKee mentioned, but really looking at that through the lens of Erin talked about kind of Maywood demographic shifting, and your perception of that shift with moving Newcastle to middle school 6. We talked about that with Maywood, but also with Issaquah Middle School, and the perception in that building, in that community, that Cougar Ridge, and the difference between Cougar Ridge and the Sunset community, what that will do, and the impact of that on those school socioeconomics as well. And so just a conversation that we are interested to engage in when that comes up.
Okay, thank you, Tim. And to round us out, group number 5, Carrie Reckling. Carrie, take it away.
All right, for the most part, pretty supportive and positive of the feedback. We appreciate the changes of the springboard. We do have a few different questions. So question 1 was relative to pieces 49A and 50, that wondering if it would be worried about the Endeavor class, the Endeavor population shrinking. Would it be better to have them go to Endeavor and then to Beaver Lake rather than Discovery and then Beaver Lake, since they'll be part of that community moving forward? So the group asked if that was maybe something that had been discussed. And I think relative to that, some of the kindergarten numbers we've already chatted about, but if that would be a good move.
Carrie, can you restate that for me one more time
Sure.
So I can
So
jot that down.
piece 49A and 50,
Okay.
we believe are currently slated to go to Discovery. Would those communities be better served to go to Endeavor due to some smaller, it looks like, Endeavor numbers that then would then still go to Beaver Lake later, but to help group them as part of that community earlier, and then moving to Beaver Lake?
Okay. So in your mind, the question would be is why would we not do a Discovery, and no, we would be doing a Discovery Endeavor split, right?
Yeah, for those two pieces going to Endeavor instead of Discovery, because they'll both end up at Beaver Lake anyway.
So we can run the numbers on that as well.
Okay. Question 2, just some questions about, it looks like elementary 16 based on the data is overcrowded before it opens. And so wondering if any adjustments or if that will be eliminated with elementary 17 when that opens, or if that could be helped and alleviated by Black Nugget with piece 38 split there to help balance those numbers. And if my group, if I'm misstating anything, please help me.
I'm just looking at the problem or the concern. So Carol, I'll ask you to restate again. So E16.
So it looks like E16 is already overcrowded before it opens. So will some of those needs be alleviated with the elementary 17 opening, or is that something that could partially be addressed by the Black Nugget piece 38, and splitting that to help balance the numbers?
Let's take a look. So for reference, piece 38 has 146 elementary age students in it, looks like.
Scroll up.
Colleen, can we take a look on what that potentially would look like? What would be the most natural split to 48? I think that's one long narrow strip all the way up Black Nugget, though, is the problem.
It is. But we'll take a look.
Yeah, and I Carrie, also to point out, we do have I have part of that. Why it shows overcapacity is that it has enrollment growth built in, of X percent. And is also one of the few buildings, I hate to say it, that we have portable capacity as well.
Okay.
So we could alleviate total capacity if needed via portables, which we can't do. And as you can see, there's only portable capacity in a handful of those buildings left. So we would be able to meet total capacity needs without changing piece 48. But it might be also worth looking at, see if we can split that piece.
Okay. And then we also had a discussion about current numbers and the elementary schools, and even though we're not discussing middle schools, but kind of where they're heading and the demographics and pulling the demographic data and the socioeconomic data that kind of other groups have already talked about as well. But wondering if we can pull some of that to reference to just to help see the balance of the different schools, similar conversations that other groups have had.
Well, what we could do is I can give you current free and reduced lunch rates. Creating a new composite rate based on the reboundary, that's a pretty difficult task. Just so you understand, I mean, that would be a lot of work to do that. Now, I will give you all the same, not speech, but kind of the district overview is that we socioeconomically are fairly homogenous. As I was in the breakout room, and maybe I can do a brief screen share of the last time I looked at free and reduced lunch rates. So this is from, can you all see that?
Yep.
Mhm.
So this is what we use to establish if a school is Title I or not. And this is from December of 19. So I'm about ready to update this for the future budget year. So this was a snapshot in time from December of 19. Those are the, we call it the poverty factor, or the free, this is free and reduced lunch rate. So you can see that our highest free and reduced lunch rate, as I talked about, was Clark, just under 20, along with Issaquah Valley. And then I'm not going to read those for you, but you can see in the district that you believe it or not, that Newcastle, Briarwood, Maple Hills, Sunset, all of those schools in red are technically Title I schools according to federal regulations, which means they have above the district average in free and reduced lunch rate. So we have the lowest free and reduced rate of any district above 4,000, because the only other two more affluent districts last I checked were Bainbridge and Mercer Island. So of any significant size, we have the lowest free and reduced lunch rate. So when it comes to socioeconomic boundarying, that's why you didn't see it as part of the charter. We had fiscal responsibility, logistics, enrollment capacity, et cetera, because reboundarying, at least in my opinion, to move your free and reduced rate a point or two can be fairly difficult. That does also swing with the economy. So I have seen similar housing, same identical schools, no reboundary, but when we have a recession, I've seen free and reduced lunch uptick a couple percent, and it has nothing to do with anything but the economy. And so, Carrie, that there it is in all its glory. You see the lowest is Cascade Ridge and Creekside and Discovery, but for the most part, by the time these kiddos all get up to their secondary schools, there's not that big of a spread. So look at IMS is at the highest with 12.98, and your lowest middle school is Pine Lake at 3.6. So you have what, an 8 or 9% spread between the two. So that's why historically we have not tried to read boundary based on socioeconomics, is because we are fairly homogenous when it comes to low income and poverty. And in fact, one thing we do to remedy that is what I talked about in the breakout group is that's why you'll see us strategically place certain programs and buildings. We do more of our adjustment or compensation on socioeconomics if need be based for program placement because we are a neighborhood school district. And so that's my story right now, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, that's perfect. And that leads into just our final question was relative to programs and understanding that programs are district decided where those placements go, but are most of these numbers assuming that different programs like Merlin, SciTech, LRC2 are staying where they currently are for the most part, their current assignments?
No, there will be program, well, some programs are staying where there are. There will be new program added. Depending upon the year. We've talked about obviously expanding dual language or language immersion to potentially adding a Mandarin program. We've talked about that. Location to be determined. We also might have a need as we continue to grow, hopefully after our COVID slump, for an additional Merlin or science tech. So those decisions, and also LRC2. as an example. So LRC2 is our self-contained special education program. It is placed geographically and strategically to serve our most highly impacted kids. And so we often will put those programs, and Dr. Bailey, I think, was on here. She's really been trying to regionalize those kids and keep them in clean feeder patterns as they move through the system. And so, that's why we reserve that kind of right as an administration to place programs. So a lot of programs are going to stay where they are, but then you're likely to see some addition as well, Carrie, as we add more schools to the fleet.
Okay, and then this may be a question for another time, so it's okay to say table it, but there was a group question that came up wondering about if busing would be available for the dual language programs as they continue to develop, or if that would be family served only, like most programs are outside of LRC2.
I can't answer that one off the cuff because right now we have neighborhood schools feeding those two programs unless they're outside of the lottery, if I recall. And so I don't know, Carrie.
Okay, that's okay. All right, thank you.
The question in the chat, Jake, is there a way to get race data for schools along with the free and reduced lunch data?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's technically, we could get ethnicity data. Again, that is not part of the tenets of our charter, and not what we're relying on to draw boundaries. So I can give you the information. It will not be a major driver in our decision making. If that was clear enough.
So we've gone through all of our groups. Jake, there was a couple of questions from Carrie's group that I just want to make sure that we were able to answer to the best of our ability tonight. Carrie, did you feel like those got answered, or was there one that's still hanging out there? I thought that there was one at the beginning that was more around, does piece 38 alleviate the elementary school 16 overcrowded situation? Did we get that answered?
I think it was more of a, we'll kind of check into it,
Okay.
which is okay. And like other group members, is there any other information you feel like would be helpful there?
That was the 38 split.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
48.
think we were just looking at 38 possibly being split going to Endeavor, just because one of the members mentioned that Endeavor had some space to possibly take on those additional students. And so that was something that we talked about in our group.
Okay. So, a lot of questions, been a very relaxing meeting for me. Is there anything, so each group kind of reported out and had different questions. Is there anything on the revised springboard proposal that folks are comfortable enough moving forward via motion and taking the leap? Or are you all a little scared yet? And there's no right or wrong answer. We can chew on this now. I always like to have continual progress. I wouldn't be a facilitator if I didn't like to move things forward.
Yeah, and Jake, I would add to what you just said. There's really one of two ways we can go right now. If there are motions on the floor, we can explore those. If there are no motions on the floor, one thing that I got from the group report outs and from some of the other question answering is that the altered and the new springboard seemed to have a lot of changes that people that were asking for through our community input. And if we don't have a motion on the floor tonight here with about 15 minutes left to go, another suggestion from me, one of the facilitators, might be that we chew on everything over break. And then we come back that first Thursday of the new year. I think it's no, it's not the first Thursday of the new year. I don't think it is. Is it the 7th? That Thursday that we come back, whatever that is. And then we answer more questions and see if we are ready to make motions then. Making a motion tonight or making a motion at more of the start of the next meeting there's really not a huge difference between those two things. So that's an option as well. So Jake, I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, but
No. And I do want folks to know whatever is done can be undone by this body. So if you make a motion and you vote it in and then we realize, oh dear, that community's angry, or that didn't make any numerical sense, you can vote to undo it. So until we take the final vote on the entire package, so we'll get done with this and we'll have all the boundaries done and motions made. And then what we'll do is, in the end, we'll have a clean spreadsheet with people and kiddos put in the right place. We'll let you digest it as a whole, clean maps, and then you will take a final vote on the whole kit and caboodle. So however you want to do it, remember, it's not done until the committee is completed. And even then, it's still advisory to the superintendent. So, you know, he's likely to stick with your recommendations. I'm not saying that there's going to be some radical difference, but we are advisory to him in this case. So either way, remember, if you want to move it forward with a motion, Dr. Ami's a little more timid than me. I like to have a little Robert's rules going and see what happens. But is there any low-hanging fruit that you discussed that would be comfortable enough making a motion on? Proper wait time.
And you can raise a hand virtually or put it in the chat, or so if anyone has a motion, you can do that.
Jake, as a point of clarification, would each of the 5 points that you had previously shared be essentially an item to make a motion on, or would a motion include the package of the 5 items that you suggested?
Either way, I would imagine, though, given that there's still, you know, just my synthesis of what I heard is that there is still some concern on number 5, some of those splits, and how they would look, and a little reticence on the black nugget piece, because I would like people potentially to do a little more homework to split it off. I haven't heard as much concern about 1, 2, or 3, just generally. That clean sunset feeder, the clean elementary 16 feeder, and then of course the hot potato Audubon Park discovery change that, you know, that may be a good Christmas or holiday present to Audubon Park if we put that one to bed at least. So those are the 3 that I didn't hear a lot of disagreement about, unless I'm wrong. But look more homework on number 4 and 5, and at least that brief synopsis, if that makes sense to you, Tim. So you can make a motion for the first 3, or 1, or none. But
we do have a hand in the air, Jake.
Oh, that's what I like.
Dana Rundle has had her hand up first. I've had 3 private chat messages telling me that Dana had her hand in the air. So Dana, you're up first.
I move that we make a revision to the current district boundary springboard to include all 5 proposed updates. Do I need to read them out individually? Knowing that we can change it later.
Yeah, why don't you read those, Dana?
That would update Sunset to be 100% Issaquah Middle School fed. Adjust the boundary to eliminate the split that was proposed to elementary 16 and feed the 100% of students to Pacific Cascade Middle School. Revise the proposal to keep Audubon Park at Discovery Elementary, which also moves piece 44 to elementary 17 instead of Creekside. The Black Nugget, piece number 38, would be reassigned to PCMS instead of IMS, and just adopt the recalculations, which it doesn't actually change any of the pieces. It just is a recalculated split between IVE, Sunny Hills, and Discovery schools.
Okay. And in
the chat from Andrew.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. Discussion time for Bob's rules here. Any further discussion on those, that motion in particular?
So if we would rather have a lesser version of that motion, then our job would be to vote no, but we could propose a revised motion.
Or you could offer a friendly amendment and then you and Dana could slug it out.
Lisa Reeder would like to propose an amendment to just move forward with 1 through 3. I have a lot of parents who are concerned about the Discovery 80-20 split, and I think it would be great if the district was able to get some of that feedback directly from the parents and chew on it, as it were, a little bit more. I have no qualms with number 4, so unless somebody else did. But.
So this is where my Roberts rules get really Bob-like. Where's my PTSA council who you do this all the time? Dana. So there's an amended motion on the floor that was seconded. According to parliamentary procedure, you would do what now? Do you know?
You think I should
Bob's
know
rules.
these rules?
Where's Suzanne Weaver?
I
when
would
you need
assume
some-
that you have to vote on the amendment and then vote on the original.
Dana is correct. You have to vote whether or not to approve the amendment. If the amendment passes, then you vote on the amended motion. If the amendment fails, you vote on the initial motion.
Thank you, Suzanne. I am so glad you're here. So Director Weaver said, I knew there was a parliamentarian amongst us somewhere, that we would now have further discussion on the amended motion, if need be, or we would take a vote on the amended motion. And the amended motion, Lisa, so I understand it, is basically number 1 through 3 on the summary that I provided. I won't have to recitate that because I think staff knows what that is. That would be a clean feeder of Sunset to IMS, a clean feeder of E16 to PCMS, and revises the Discovery Elementary Audubon Park, keeps them at Discovery, and moves Peace 44 to Elementary 17. Any further discussion on that? Ms.
Dana.
Rundle?
Sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult. Number 5 is not changing those percentages. Correct. It is just a proper recalculation, just for clarification. I agree, we can probably revisit those, but it is not changing those numbers. It's just updating the proper calculations.
Correct. You're sorry, Dana. Yeah, I misspoke when I was saying that it was changing the splits. You're right. I just am getting constantly flooded throughout this entire meeting with people who I know are very vocally opposed to it. So that's why, from my standpoint, I'm just standing up for the 1 through 3 because of that. But you're right.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think you've given the technical team more to think about on those splits. I heard maybe putting Endeavor into play. I could potentially work with the team and figure out, is there a way we could either make them closer to 50-50 or eliminate them? We'll see. We've tried quite a few times, but we can go back over break and look at that. So
it would also allow us the time over break for community members to solicit their feedback over this time and really hone in on some real finite points as well. So we could take that feedback over the break.
And I think to do the process, to demonstrate to the community, as you've seen, we try to be responsive to their input. Number 4, of course, piece 38 is very large, and that could impact the size of an elementary school if we were to split it. So that one might not be quite ready yet as well. So I'm not a voting member, but there is a rather clean amendment on the floor. Dana Rundle. Any further discussion on the proposed amendment? Okay, so we're going to put the poll up.
And again, one more time, I just, for clarity purposes, the amendment would be looking to approve 1 through 3, not 1 through 5.
Correct. Okay, are we comfortable for calling the question? Stephen, DJ Collins, could you please put the poll up, please? Thank you. All right, American Idol.
And remember, only the 39 folks who are voting members should be voting on this.
Yes, staff, did you hear that? Thank you.
Okay. We've got a few more votes coming in, but we've already met our threshold.
Yeah, let's see if we can we have one member that maybe have abstained. I'm not going to call them out. So there's, we will leave the voting open for a few more seconds because right now it shows that we're at 38 of 54.
No, there should be 40 votes.
So I'm saying I only have 38 votes total. Dr. Owen.
Right, and we have one person who is not here tonight.
So we should have 39 votes unless there was an abstention. Or they left the meeting because they had to use the restroom or something, and I can't keep track of them. So we'll end the polling. And it's 36 votes yes, 2 votes no, 95.
92% I got, so that makes the 75% threshold of a quorum.
So team, committee members, you have taken your first action to revise the springboard. You have answered and hopefully helped alleviate some community concerns before the holidays. And you've done a lot of good work. It's remote. I'm sorry, it's kind of clunky, and we send you into breakout rooms.
Jake, you still have to vote on the motion. You only voted on the amendment.
The final motion, correct, Suzanne?
Yes. The
Okay.
amended motion.
So the amendment passes. Now we need to have the amended motion. I'm glad Suzanne's here. So let's relaunch the polling. And now we are going to vote on the amended motion.
And again, if you are voting on the amended motion, if you were to vote yes, you would be voting yes on approving 1 through 3, not 1 through 5, 1 through 3 of those points on the sheet.
One through 3, Rosalind. Okay. We have 37 votes total.
A 94.8% of our 39-person quorum.
Yep. So the motion carries. 37 votes yes, 0 votes no. The amended motion now carries. I told you this was Bob's rules. Without Director Weaver here, it'd be really loose. So thank you, Suzanne, for the parliamentary help.
So Jake, we've got about 2.5 minutes left. I'd like to summarize what our thoughts are for our meeting on the 7th, and then maybe sew us up that way and try to be done here at 8 o'clock, like we said we would. So the plan is to come back January 7th. We've got 3 weeks. That's a 3-week period before we meet next. That's going to give the community time to give us input. We will get that input out to you the Tuesday afternoon, which would be the 5th, January 5th, along with the agenda and then the other documentation. I know that the technical team, I heard them say that they're going to work on the maps a little bit to try to get some major highways and byways and school locations in on those maps that maybe help that out a little bit. So we'll get those pieces out to you Tuesday afternoon, the 5th. That's the plan on that piece. We'll come back on the 7th. We will review our minutes and hopefully approve those minutes. Obviously, make sure that we have our quorum and whatnot. And then we will jump back into our elementary boundary, more finite points that we were unable to come to any motions on. We need to get some more feedback on that and do some more thinking on that. And then once we, there will probably be some great breakout group work there. Answer any and all questions. And then if we have time, we will then jump into our middle school conversations, but we want to continue our elementary conversations and see if we can flush out some more details there before we jump to middle schools. Jake, does that sound like we're on the right track with looking forward?
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you for making the proposal better. As we said, it's a springboard and we start from somewhere because all of us don't just want to wander around and try to figure out where to start. So as again, I really thank you all for moving the process forward in this virtual environment, pretty difficult. And then mostly, you know, with the community feedback, it often makes things, the boundaries better than the technical team thought out of the gate. So we have a little bit of homework to do, and we'll get that done for you. Thank you. Obviously, Teresa and Lisa White, admin support for both of us. Thank you very much. And then my technical team, Colleen and Bridget in particular, heavy lifts on all the imaginations and maps and redrawing the boundaries. And then to the committee members, including my principal colleagues, thanks for showing up on the Thursday before break, and have one good last day more of virtual learning, and then have a wonderful holiday break. I think everybody deserves it. And I'll love to see that 21 instead of the 20 in the year. So other than that, I think we can sign off. Dr. Almy, anything else?
Yeah, I guess the one other thing I would add is if you have any questions over break or before the first meeting, feel free to reach out to Jake or I. We'll do our very best to answer those. Have a great break, everybody. It's going to be a little bit different holiday season. Thanks for spending some time with us tonight. See you in 3 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.